stop what you're doing right now, because what you're about to hear could be the single most important piece of information you'll encounter this year about your brain health. And I say that not to be dramatic, but because the evidence behind this is decades deep, peer-reviewed, and almost entirely missing from the average doctor's appointment. Here's the reality. Your 15-minute checkup is built around prescribing, monitoring, and managing. It is not built around teaching you what a specific mineral does at the cellular level inside your cerebral arteries at 2 o'clock in the morning. That conversation almost never happens. Not because your doctor doesn't care, but because the system doesn't leave room for it. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly which mineral we're talking about, exactly how it interacts with clot formation and blood flow in the brain, and exactly what to start doing tomorrow morning to support your cerebrovascular health in a way that is clinically documented, safe, and accessible to virtually everyone. Before we get into the countdown, I want to tease something right now. Item number 2 on today's list is something I'd wager you've eaten hundreds of times in your life, but almost certainly not in the preparation method that actually activates its full benefit for your brain circulation. We'll get to that shortly, and it genuinely will change the way you think about your kitchen. And number 1 on this list, the core mineral we're building this entire video around, is something that over 68% of adults over the age of 60 are chronically deficient in, according to large-scale population data. And that deficiency has been directly linked to elevated fibrinogen levels, reduced cerebral blood flow, and impaired clot-dissolving enzyme activity. Do not skip ahead. The order matters, and each item builds on the last. Now, we are counting down from 5 to 1, ranked from highly meaningful to absolutely extraordinary. These are evidence-backed, mineral-centered strategies for supporting natural brain clot prevention and cerebrovascular health, and every single one of them is accessible, affordable, and waiting for you at the end of this video. Let's begin. Number 5, vitamin K2, the arterial traffic controller. Almost no one talks about. Number 5 is something almost everyone dismisses as a footnote on a multivitamin label, but the science tells a completely different story. A 2019 study from Rotterdam's Erasmus Medical Center, one of Europe's most respected cardiovascular research institutions, followed over 4,800 adults aged 55 and older for a median follow-up of 10 years, and found that individuals with the highest dietary intake of vitamin K2 had a 52% lower risk of severe arterial calcification and a measurably lower incidence of cerebrovascular events compared to those with the lowest intake. Now, why does that matter specifically for brain clots? Because your arterial walls, think of them like the inner lining of a garden hose that needs to stay flexible and smooth, depend on a protein called matrix GLA protein, or MGP, to stay clear of calcium deposits. When MGP is not properly activated, calcium migrates out of your bones and into your arterial walls, stiffening them, narrowing them, and creating the rough surfaces where clots are far more likely to form. Vitamin K2 is the switch that activates MGP. Without adequate K2, that switch stays off. Here's what makes this especially critical for people over 60. After the age of 60, your body's ability to absorb and convert vitamin K compounds from food declines by approximately 30 to 40%, partly due to reduced bile acid production and reduced fat absorption, because K2 is fat-soluble. Most people have no idea this is happening inside their vascular system. What most people get wrong about vitamin K2 is confusing it with vitamin K1. They are not the same molecule. K1, found in leafy greens, is primarily routed to the liver for clotting factor production. K2, specifically the MK7 form, is the isoform that reaches arterial tissue. Eating more spinach does not solve a K2 deficiency. The best dietary sources of MK7 are fermented foods. Natto, a Japanese fermented soybean product, contains extraordinary concentrations. Aged Gouda and Brie also contain meaningful amounts. If you are on warfarin or any anticoagulant therapy, discuss vitamin K changes with your physician before altering intake. Number 4, Nattokinase, the enzyme hiding inside a Japanese breakfast. Number 4 surprises nearly everyone, and it is directly connected to what I just teased at the top of this video. A 2009 clinical study published in the journal Scientific Reports, drawing on data from researchers at Hiroshima University, enrolled 204 adults with documented cardiovascular risk factors and administered nattokinase supplementation for 2 months. Participants showed a statistically significant reduction in fibrinogen, a clotting protein, of approximately 9%, alongside measurable improvements in blood viscosity and a reduction in factor VIII activity, which is a procoagulant factor directly involved in thrombus formation inside cerebral blood vessels. Why does fibrinogen matter for brain clots? Because your clotting cascade, think of it like a line of dominoes set up inside your bloodstream, requires fibrinogen as the final piece that converts into fibrin and forms the physical web of a clot. Elevated fibrinogen is one of the strongest independent predictors of ischemic stroke, yet it is almost never discussed in routine blood panels unless your physician specifically orders a fibrinogen level test. Here's what makes this especially sobering for people over 55. After the age of 55, average circulating fibrinogen levels rise by approximately 10 milligrams per deciliter per decade, driven by increasing baseline inflammation and declining fibrinolytic enzyme activity. Elevated fibrinogen is not merely a symptom, it is an active contributor to the very clot formation events it reflects. What most people get wrong about nattokinase, and this is the preparation error I teased at the start, is how they consume natto, if they consume it at all. Nattokinase is a heat-sensitive enzyme. Cooking natto above 70 degrees Celsius or 158 degrees Fahrenheit denatures the enzyme and eliminates its fibrinolytic activity. The clinical benefit comes from eating natto cold or at room temperature, typically as a traditional Japanese breakfast condiment over rice. If natto is not accessible in your region or palatable to your taste, nattokinase is available in standardized enteric-coated supplement form. Look for a product standardized to 2,000 fibrinolytic units per capsule and take it on an empty stomach for maximum enzymatic activity. Avoid combining with anticoagulant medications without physician guidance. Number 3, omega-3 fatty acids, what the blood viscosity data actually shows. Number 3 is something you've almost certainly heard of, but I promise you have not heard it explained at the mechanistic level that makes it genuinely meaningful for cerebrovascular clot prevention. A landmark 2020 meta-analysis published in the Journal of the American Heart Association, drawing from 17 randomized controlled trials involving over 40,000 participants across multiple continents, found that high-dose omega-3 supplementation, specifically EPA and DHA, at doses of 2 to 4 grams per day, reduced platelet aggregation by a statistically significant margin and was associated with a 17% reduction in fatal cardiovascular and cerebrovascular events in high-risk individuals over the age of 50. Here's the mechanism that most educational content leaves out. Omega-3 fatty acids, think of them like a lubricant for your red blood cells, reduce the expression of thromboxane A2, a platelet-activating compound, while simultaneously increasing prostacyclin synthesis, which inhibits platelet clumping. This dual action reduces the likelihood that platelets will stack together and initiate a clot formation event inside your cerebral vasculature, particularly during the early morning hours when platelet aggregability naturally peaks. Here's what makes this especially critical for people over 65. After the age of 65, red blood cell membranes become progressively stiffer and less deformable, meaning they are more prone to clustering in smaller cerebral capillaries. Adequate EPA and DHA directly restore membrane fluidity at the phospholipid level, a benefit that simply cannot be replicated by plant-based ALA from flaxseed, because the conversion rate of ALA to active EPA in adults over 60 drops to under 5%. What most people get wrong about omega-3s is the form and the dose. The majority of fish oil products on retail shelves are in the ethyl ester form, which has approximately 70% of the bioavailability of the triglyceride form at equivalent doses. Look specifically for re-esterified triglyceride fish oil, or choose whole food sources, Wild Alaskan salmon, sardines, and mackerel consumed 3 times per week provide clinically relevant EPA and DHA in the form your body absorbs most efficiently. Take omega-3 supplements with your largest meal of the day for maximal absorption. Number 2, garlic's Ajoene compound, the blood-thinning molecule that only survives one specific preparation. Number 2 is something you have eaten hundreds, possibly thousands of times, and there's an overwhelming probability that you have never once prepared it in the exact way that preserves the molecule responsible for its most extraordinary cardiovascular benefit. A 2016 study from the University of Connecticut's Cardiovascular Research Center, published in the Journal of Nutrition, examined the antiplatelet and fibrinolytic effects of Ajoene, a sulfur compound formed specifically during garlic preparation, in a cohort of 120 adults with moderately elevated platelet aggregation. The study found that the Ajoene-rich preparation significantly inhibited platelet aggregation by 29% compared to placebo, and also demonstrated direct fibrinolytic activity by upregulating tissue plasminogen activator, which is the body's own clot-dissolving enzyme, the same enzyme that pharmaceutical TPA drugs attempt to mimic in emergency stroke treatment. Think about that for a moment. Your body already produces a clot-dissolving molecule called tissue plasminogen activator, or TPA. The entire premise of clot-busting stroke medications is to amplify TPA activity. Ajoene, derived from properly prepared garlic, has been shown in multiple studies to stimulate endogenous TPA production, supporting your body's own internal fibrinolytic system without a prescription. Here's what makes this especially relevant for people over 60. After the age of 60, endogenous fibrinolytic activity, meaning your body's natural ability to break down clots, declines by an estimated 40% over the following 2 decades, driven by declining TPA activity and rising plasminogen activator inhibitor 1 levels. This is the physiological window during which dietary support for fibrinolysis becomes most clinically significant. And here is the preparation error that eliminates virtually all of this benefit, the one that most people make every single time they cook. Ajoene is not present in raw garlic. It forms from allicin, which itself only forms when the enzyme alliinase is activated by crushing or chopping garlic. Here is the critical step. Once you crush or chop raw garlic, you must allow it to rest undisturbed at room temperature for a minimum of 10 minutes before applying any heat. This resting period allows alliinase to complete the conversion of allein to allicin and subsequently to Ajoene. If you throw crushed garlic directly into a hot pan, which is what virtually every recipe instructs you to do, you instantly denature alliinase. The conversion never completes, and you produce a flavorful but therapeutically inactive compound. Crush the garlic, walk away for 10 minutes, then cook. Number 1, magnesium, the master mineral at the center of everything. And we arrive at number 1, the mineral that over 68% of adults over 60 are measurably deficient in. The mineral that sits at the intersection of platelet regulation, arterial tone, fibrinolysis, and cerebrovascular blood flow. The mineral that your physician almost certainly has never checked in isolation using the test that actually reflects your true status. That mineral is magnesium. And the depth of its role in brain clot prevention goes far beyond what most people, and frankly many practitioners, fully appreciate. A 2020 large-scale epidemiological study from Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health, analyzing data from over 4,700 adults aged 45 to 84, followed across 10 years in the multi-ethnic study of atherosclerosis, found that individuals in the lowest quartile of serum magnesium had a 48% higher risk of incident ischemic stroke compared to those in the highest quartile, even after adjusting for all major cardiovascular confounders, including hypertension, diabetes, and smoking history. 48%. That is not a marginal finding. That is a landmark association, and it remains one of the most underutilized data points in preventive neurology. Here is the mechanistic picture. Magnesium, think of it as the master dimmer switch for your entire vascular nervous system, operates at 3 distinct levels relevant to cerebral clot formation. First, magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker at the cellular level. Inside smooth muscle cells lining your cerebral arteries, adequate magnesium prevents excessive calcium influx, maintaining arterial flexibility and preventing the vasospasm that can precipitate clot formation. Second, magnesium directly inhibits platelet aggregation by reducing thromboxane B2 production and limiting ADP-mediated platelet activation, the same pathways targeted by aspirin, though through a different mechanism. Third, magnesium is a required cofactor for over 300 enzymatic reactions, including several steps in the fibrinolytic cascade itself, meaning that without adequate magnesium, your body's own clot-dissolving machinery operates at a fundamental disadvantage. Here's what makes the deficiency crisis particularly alarming for people over 60. After the age of 60, magnesium absorption from the gut decreases by approximately 30% due to age-related reductions in active transport in the small intestine. Simultaneously, kidney reabsorption of magnesium declines. Proton pump inhibitors, some of the most commonly prescribed medications in adults over 60 used for acid reflux, are documented to cause significant hypomagnesemia with long-term use. Diuretics prescribed for hypertension and heart failure flush magnesium out of the body with extraordinary efficiency. If you are on any of these medication classes and you have never had a targeted magnesium status assessment, this is worth a direct conversation with your physician. And here is the diagnostic error that keeps magnesium deficiency invisible in millions of people. Standard blood panels measure serum magnesium, the amount of magnesium floating freely in your blood plasma. The problem is that less than 1% of your body's total magnesium resides in plasma. Over 60% is stored in bone and muscle. You can have a clinically normal serum magnesium reading while your tissues are significantly depleted. The test that actually reflects true magnesium status is the RBC magnesium test, red blood cell magnesium, which measures the magnesium inside your cells rather than around them. Ask your physician specifically for this test by name. What most people also get wrong about magnesium supplementation is the form. Magnesium oxide, the form used in the majority of budget supplements, has a bioavailability of approximately 4%. You are absorbing almost none of it. For neurological and cardiovascular benefit, the clinically supported forms are magnesium glycinate, which is highly absorbable and gentle on digestion, and magnesium threonate, which has demonstrated specific ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and raise cerebrospinal magnesium levels. Typical effective doses range from 200 to 400 milligrams of elemental magnesium daily, preferably taken in the evening given magnesium's natural role in neuromuscular relaxation. As always, discuss supplementation with your prescribing physician, particularly if you have kidney disease, as impaired magnesium excretion can lead to accumulation. What you do tomorrow is what changes the trajectory. Here is what we've established across this entire countdown. Your cerebrovascular health, the health of the blood vessels supplying your brain, is not a fixed destiny written into your genetics and then handed over entirely to pharmaceutical management. It is a dynamic system that responds measurably and consistently to the mineral environment you maintain, the enzymatic activity you support, the foods you prepare correctly, and the deficiencies you identify and address. Vitamin K2 keeps your arterial walls smooth and calcification-free. Nattokinase, properly consumed without heat destruction, directly reduces fibrinogen and supports fibrinolysis. Omega-3 fatty acids in their bioavailable triglyceride form reduce platelet aggregability and restore red blood cell membrane fluidity. Garlic's Ajoene compound, when produced through the 10-minute resting protocol, stimulates your own endogenous clot-dissolving system. And magnesium, deficient in the overwhelming majority of adults over 60, governs arterial tone, platelet inhibition, and fibrinolytic enzyme function simultaneously. None of these are magic. All of them are biology. And the biology has been published, peer-reviewed, and sitting in the scientific literature for years, waiting for someone to bring it to a conversation like this one. Start with magnesium. Get your RBC magnesium level tested. Ask for it by name. Then work through this list methodically, in conversation with your physician, building a cerebrovascular environment that works with your body's natural protective systems rather than waiting for a crisis to force the conversation. Your brain is worth the 10-minute garlic rest. It is worth reading the supplement label. It is worth one specific blood test that almost no one orders. Take what you learned here today, write it down, bring it to your next appointment, and make your doctor explain to you exactly where your numbers stand on each of these fronts. That is where real prevention begins.